In this video, I'd like to share a few reasons that I've observed as a teacher that basically stop beginner jazz guitar players making progress and moving on to the next level. Hey everybody, Jamie Holroyd here, helping you learn jazz guitar. If you're new around here and you want a structured guide to learning jazz guitar, then please check out my newly updated Beginner Jazz Guitar course. The first reason in which a lot of beginners stop making progress is because they see theory as a limitation. Theory is just a guide, saying you can use certain notes over certain chords, and don't get me wrong, it's useful to know that stuff and learn that in the beginning, to learn about arpeggios, scale, chord-scale relationship. It's all good, but equally it should not be a limitation. So you've got to trust your ears ultimately and trust your fingers. Don't get too bogged down thinking you've got to play this scale over this chord. Ultimately, a good melody line is a good melody line, and it's just going to work if you can hear it. And there's plenty of great examples in which improvisers are playing something that's not initially related to the chord at all, but it still sounds great. So don't let theory be an obstacle when it comes to your progression. The next obstacle that many beginner jazz guitar players face is not knowing enough songs. If you take two musicians, one that knows 1,000 songs and 2 scales, and the second musician knows 1,000 scales and 2 songs, then the guy that knows 1,000 songs is going to have a lot more gigs because he's the guy that can play through the gigs and he knows his stuff, right? So when you first begin, of course, learning your first couple of standards, it can be a slow process if you're new to jazz and there's a lot to take in. But equally, don't stop at 2 or 3 songs. Try and get to 10, 20, 30 songs. And if you get to maybe 10 or 20 songs, that's enough to do maybe 2 45 sets, right? So that is one thing that a lot of beginner jazz guitar players do. They just stay on the same couple of songs. Autumn Leaves, Blue Bossa, and don't get me wrong, those are great songs. You need to learn those. They're very commonly called and you need to know them. But start listening to repertoire, start thinking, okay, what songs do you like the sound of that you want to learn? You need to keep expanding your list. So write a list of songs and try and expand it. If you want to learn 1 song a month, then in 12 months you can learn 12 songs. You have to be able to internalize these songs, play them over and over again. If you don't play them for a while, see if you can recall them. If you can't recall them, go back and learn them, and then try the same thing in a couple of weeks. You know, if someone says, let's play All of Me, the chords need to be there, the melody, you know, it needs to be there ready to go. Any song, Autumn Leaves, Misty, okay, make sure everything's underneath your fingertips and you're playing the songs that you've learned regularly. Don't be looking for any folders with chords or melodies or anything like that. You either know the songs or you don't. So if you don't know any songs today, learn one. It might take you a month to learn the first one. Record a list of the songs, okay, write them down, and then if you learn 1 song a month, most of my students it takes them a month to learn, you'll have 12 songs in a year, okay, and then what you'll find is that although it might have taken you a month to learn the first one, if you keep playing it, you'll be able to basically play it without even thinking about it, okay, so that's how you build up repertoire. Another reason that stops jazz guitar players moving on to the next level is their ears are not developed enough. One of the most biggest problems that I see amongst new jazz guitar players is that they get lost. They go to a jam session, they start playing, it starts off good, and then all of a sudden you're taking 3.5 choruses, everyone's looking at you to stop playing and you have no idea where you are. You need to develop an ear, okay? You need to be able to do that. So if you've never done any ear training whatsoever before, then you need to be able to work out the difference between a major chord and a minor chord. So even if you have to put some Beatles songs on, if you have to put some pop and rock songs on and work out the chords, that is definitely step 1 if you've never done any of that. If you can do that fairly comfortably, then try and work out a few jazz standard chord progressions by ear, okay? I don't think you necessarily have to exclude the real book entirely. I think that, you know, the real book is a useful resource to have as a rough guide as long as you've got an ear, okay? So I think that that is something that you want to consider. So if you've never done any ear training, try and work out a few songs by ear. If you've never done any single line soloing, then try and work out just a few basic melodies. They can be nursery rhyme melodies to begin with, major scale, things that come from the major scale are all good. Maybe a few basic blues riffs, and then as you feel more confident, try to work out some jazz riffs, some jazz lines. A great solo to start with is Chitlin's Con Carne by Kenny Burrell, Chet Baker's solo on It Could Happen to You, Miles Davis's solo on So What, Miles Davis's solo on Autumn Leaves. don't start with Giant Steps by John Coltrane, because you're not going to have a good time. The next reason why a lot of jazz guitar players don't make progress is we don't know the major scale well enough. You have to know the scale in all positions across the guitar neck. And once you know that, you've got to try and go beyond that. Okay, can you play the scale in thirds? Can you play 4-note patterns? In all the positions, etc. Because you've got to remember, once you know the major scale, everything else comes from that. For example, if we're playing this pitch collection down here, if we start that on a D note, that gives us a D Dorian sound. If we get the same scale, and we move the C to a C sharp, that gives us a D melodic minor, right? And all this comes from a C major scale. If we look at our pitch collection, again, all these scales that I was just playing, if you take any of the G notes in any of these and you move that to a G sharp, so if we go maybe this one, and rather than play a G there, we play a G sharp, that gives us A harmonic minor. And then the same thing here, rather than play a G, G sharp. And that all comes from that major scale inside out, right? Even simply, you could just be thinking of that major scale starting on an A note, and that would give you all your A natural minor positions as well. So that's one reason why you've got to know the major scale inside out. Practice it all across the neck, played in thirds, 4-note patterns, that kind of thing. Really make sure you prioritize that above all the other scales that you learn. Building on from that, the next reason is that most players don't improvise in all 5 positions. So if you're playing over a 2-5-1 in C, that's it in that position, but can you do the same kind of ideas in that position? Can you do the same thing in the position after? And then the same thing higher up. You've got to play it in all positions, okay? So once again, just use the pitch collections. There's one starting on the 5th, make sure you know your arpeggios. Same thing there, right? D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Playing all 5 positions. Don't be too comfortable in just one. Another reason that stops many beginner jazz guitar players progressing to the next level is that they are simply not jamming enough. So jazz is an interactive thing, right? When we play jazz, we think about playing it with other musicians, and it's great to practice. We all love to practice, to sit here, work out solos, practice scales, learn tunes. All that is good, but it really all comes down to preparing us to play with other people. So you have to, at some stage, play with other musicians to get confident, or else you're never going to be confident with what you're doing. So it is a very important thing to do. So maybe try and look at jam sessions in your area. If you're really not that confident and you don't want to even do that, then even if you just go to a teacher and you spend some time playing with the teacher, they should get you confident enough to be able to approach jam sessions eventually. And sometimes if you look online now, there are numerous guitar instructors doing things like guitar retreats, guitar workshops, things like that. So the good thing about those is that you typically find beginner level players as well. So that might be a little bit more welcoming in one aspect, or less intimidating than a jam session. So yeah, you've got to start playing with other people. As soon as you know 1 or 2 songs, really, don't think that, when I learn this amount of songs, or when I get to this level, then I'll be good enough. Try and start out as quick as you can. As soon as you can keep the chords down, as soon as you can play a melody, and as soon as you can basically solo over a song, then seek out other people to play with. The next one is knowing your chords in all 5 positions as well. So initially, once you've learnt your drop 2 chords, for example, if you're learning minor 7th, drop 2 chords, you want to try and voice lead those in all 5 positions across the guitar neck. So 2-5-1 in C, D minor 7, G major 7, and then you can play a C major 7. Same thing, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Same thing further up. D minor 7, G7, C major 7. D minor 7, G7, and then C major 7, right? All positions up and down the neck. The guitar has 2 E strings, so if you're playing a D minor 7 there, you can put the 5th on the bottom 2 and play 2, 5, 1 there also. Right, you can do the same thing there. D minor 7, G7, and then C major 7. Okay, so you want to make sure you can play 2, 5, 1 in all the positions across the neck. Usually 4 or 5 inversions covers the entire thing, and if you can do that with the plain vanilla chords, then you can add things to them. So for example, D minor 7, we can make that D minor 9, G7, we can make that G7 13, and then we can play a C major 9. So, but it all comes from knowing the fundamentals very well across the entire fingerboard to begin with. The next reason why beginners don't progress is they're not listening to enough jazz records. If you're watching this video now and I said to you, can you name 5 different jazz saxophonists, and you can't get there after a minute or so of thinking, or you've got to get Spotify and start looking or something like that, then you need to be doing more listening. So you can Google, you know, the essential jazz albums, and that'll give you things like Blue Train by John Coltrane. It'll give you, you know, Kind of Blue by Miles, maybe Chitlins Con Carne, Midnight Blue, sorry, by Kenny Burrell from the guitar perspective, or The Incredible Jazz Guitar of Wes Montgomery. Or you can just, you know, listen to some of the, you know, more recognised jazz artists like Charlie Parker. Thelonious Monk had some fantastic records, obviously, and a wide discography that you can check out too. But yeah, you've got to be listening to as much as what you are playing, because although it is good to transcribe, and I've done that and I recommend doing a lot of transcription, you know, where you literally work out solos on the guitar, write them down, learn to sing them, learn to play them. That's cool, but you can also learn a lot from osmosis. So if you just sit there and listen to music, if you think about, you know, just listening to what the improviser was trying to convey, you can actually learn a lot about improvising through doing that without necessarily picking up your guitar. And, you know, I think a combination of both is good. There should be some hands-on transcription, but some of the students that I've taught that have the best results and most success are the people that know and love the music. They have big CD collections, they can tell you different artists, different albums, stuff they like, stuff they don't like. So that is certainly something that you want to consider as well. If you can't name a couple of jazz albums, then check out some of the most, you know, famous works by on lists on Google and things like that, and start to listen to jazz today, and that will definitely have a knock-on effect on how you play. The next one is a big one, and that's not knowing the notes on the guitar neck. Okay, so an easy way to do this, if you don't know the notes on the guitar neck, most guys are pretty good on string 6 and 5. Okay, so just set a timer, see how long it takes you. Start with F, find it on the D string, G string, B string. First time you do that, it might take you 45 seconds, might take you a minute and a half. Write it down, acknowledge it, and then just try to beat your time. And it really is that simple, okay? Do it with all 12 notes, okay? At first, it's going to be a little bit slow and a little bit frustrating, but if you stick with it, I honestly guarantee that if you stick with that, most of my students, a couple of weeks, 2 months at the very top, you'll be able to find these notes like you will the letters to your name, right? So you want to try and test yourself, just pick any random note, let's say B natural, and you need to be able to get it like that, okay? You can't be thinking about what these notes are. If you want to understand the fingerboard, that really is a necessary step to being able to do that. The last thing that I like to say is that a lot of people, the last reason that I like to share with you is that jazz is not easy, and a lot of people don't stick it out for long enough, okay? It's not an easy style of music to learn, and if you want to develop an ear, if you want to learn the instrument and develop technique on the instrument, and you want to learn a bunch of standards, it ain't going to happen in a week, it ain't going to happen in 2 weeks, it takes months, years. I'm still learning, and it's an ongoing process. You have to be comfortable with the journey and enjoy the journey, okay? But I think it's very misleading to think that it can be easy, okay? You've just got to stick with it, really. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and I think that once you've got that in mind and you practice every day and you stick to it, then it obviously becomes a lot easier. It's easier said than done, and there are times where you are going to feel like quitting, especially if you're new to this. But what I find is that most people, once they stick with it for say a year, 2 years, they never give it up. And almost everybody that I've asked, do you ever regret learning jazz? Aside from those that have tried to make a living playing it, then most of us don't regret the time that we spent investing learning to play it. Okay, so that concludes this list. Those are what I think are the biggest reasons why a lot of people don't progress, but I'd love to know what you think about these items and what your suggestions are. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and if you want more videos like this, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button.